WFLA Now will begin momentarily. WFLA Now will begin momentarily. Live on WFLA Now, this is Hey JB. Here's JB Buno.
Where is 8-year-old Harmony Montgomery? We might be closer to answers this Thursday, as New Hampshire authorities call a press conference with an update on the young girl's disappearance more than 2.5 years after she was last seen. We're live in the Stream Center to, of course, let you know the very latest and bring you this press conference live from Manchester, New Hampshire. Hello there to you folks. JB here with you live on WFLA Now. Let's get right to, of course, my colleague, WFLA's Josh Benson of WFLA News Channel 8. Good to have you here, Josh.
Good to be here.
And talking about the Harmony Montgomery story. And for those of you unfamiliar, kind of give you the quick breakdown, and then we'll go a little bit more into the timeline here momentarily in advance of this 2 o'clock press conference. But really what this boils down to, Harmony here in the center of your screen, was reported missing in December of last year, more than 2 years after she was last seen, leading to parents crying out across the country and really around the world as an international audience gravitated towards this story, asking, how can a young girl go missing and no one say anything or report it to police for a period of more than 2 years? It has been a mystery that has given us a few nuggets of information, Josh, over these last 6 months. But really, the biggest update potentially coming in about 22 minutes from now when this press conference gets underway.
You know, which is good because on a case like this, JB, you know, oftentimes something happens and then it's months and months and months, if not years, before you get any kind of update. So I think it's good that we're going to hear an update today. It's kind of hard to determine what exactly that is. Some are saying this could be shifting into a homicide investigation. They may have more proof of that and may direct this in that direction. But we're speculating at this point. We don't have any idea exactly what the announcement's going to be, but they claim it's going to be a pretty big one. But this case has kind of struck a nerve with a lot of people out there. Obviously, you have a little girl who, you know, disappeared under suspicious circumstances. 2 years later, then she's announced as missing from the mother, showing concern that her daughter is gone. And then for months, we kind of backtracked and peeled back each layer of the onion, so to speak, to figure out, all right, who's involved with the dad and the stepmom and their records. And eventually both, you know, were charged and arrested. Those are things that all came into play in this case in a very bizarre set of circumstances. And at the center of all this is this little girl who still hasn't been found. So I think a lot of people want to know. They're curious as to know how this happened, obviously, but they want this little girl found.
So let's go over the timeline and remind folks how we got up to this point, because this is going to be a press conference announcing an update in the Harmony Montgomery disappearance. She would be, if she is alive today, and if she is still alive, and I know that her mother, that's her mother there in the center of your screen, Crystal Story, trying to hold out as much hope as possible. She's 8 years old, but 5 years old when she was last seen, and 7 years old when she was reported missing to New Hampshire police. So let's kind of break down. October 2019 is when her basically the last time that anybody saw her. It was December of 2021, 2 years and 2 months later, when a Manchester police announcement came out that they had actually received news that she was in fact missing, and when they dug a little deeper, that they had determined that she hadn't been seen since October 2019. Josh, you and I have been in the industry for a long time.
Yep.
I really don't know how many times I can recall hearing about a missing person case, especially involving a child, where the person was last seen not months ago, years ago. I mean, that's unheard of.
How does somebody just go off the radar? A little girl. I mean, I don't let my daughter out of my sight every 5 seconds, let alone 2 years. You know, it's like who just loses a little girl and then doesn't bring anything up to authorities until 2 years later. As part of your timeline, then all of a sudden we learn about Adam Montgomery and Kayla Montgomery. They come into the picture. Now, Adam is the dad, and in January was charged with assault for allegedly giving Harmony, the little girl, a black eye back in 2019. That's about the time we last heard, as you mentioned, of Harmony being anywhere. He was granted custody of Harmony by a Massachusetts court. That's according to an affidavit in the case. And Harmony's mother at the time admitted to struggling with substance abuse. She had problems. She had drug issues. And so that's kind of where Harmony went back and forth between the mom and the dad, as far as we understand it. And now Kayla is the stepmom, as far as I understand. She was charged with fraud. She was collecting food stamps in Harmony's name up until about June 2021. So she, I believe, is out on bond at this point, but also faces perjury charges in connections to statements that she made to a grand jury. So here you have two individuals, the dad and the stepmom, and there are your pictures of these individuals here. This is what we're working with. And the little girl missing. Now, a lot of fingers are pointing at this couple here. One's in jail, the dad's in jail, the other is not. And, hopefully today we learn more about what happened in those years that Harmony just wasn't anywhere to be found.
And let's also explain, too, why, again, reiterate why Harmony was in the custody of Adam. Harmony, of course, in Adam's custody, not in the custody of Crystal Sorey, the mother, because of substance abuse struggles, as we understand it. And that, of course, leading to Crystal later on in her life, as she was able to get her life together, able to try to figure out exactly what happened to her daughter as she kind of recovered the ability to do so. And I know that there's been a lot said about Crystal Sorey online. She has been very vocal in pleading with police, pleading with the public, doing everything that she possibly can to find Harmony, to find her daughter. And it's been extremely difficult for her to maintain hope, as she has put it in interviews with various members of the media, including Brian Enton. And so there's just been so much leading up to this point, this Thursday update that is going to be coming in. Again, 2 o'clock, if you're just joining us here, folks, 2 o'clock update announced in the Harmony Montgomery case. And we'll bring you that press conference live from Manchester, New Hampshire. This has been a multi-agency effort getting up to this point. And if we kind of accelerate the timeline a little bit, Josh, if we go a little bit further on, I'm going to bring up the dates here. There was a home that was searched. And a lot of the social media activity today has been focused on this being the first press conference in the aftermath of things being removed from that home, a major police search wrapping up at a home where Harmony Montgomery was known to reside. And I know that there was a refrigerator and other pieces of evidence, key pieces of evidence, that were removed from the house that day and taken in, of course, for forensic examination. And whether or not, we do not know at this time whether or not that refrigerator or whether or not any of the evidence collected that day during that major search, and I'll try to get a date here.
It was June, I think.
It was June.
Yeah, and
June.
The state and federal agencies. That was
mid-June. Sorry, mid-June.
Yeah, Adam's apartment building, and that's where he and Kayla stayed. So that's where they searched, I believe, that, and found the fridge, and then they wrapped the appliance in black plastic and just put it into a truck. Now, as far as we don't know why they did that, obviously, but that was the central piece of evidence that they took away from his apartment at the time.
We're here, of course, also interactively on YouTube. We're going to be launching on Facebook Live in about 15 minutes as well. We'll also pay attention to Twitter. Josh will check for some Twitter comments if we can, and I'll be paying attention to Twitter as well. But really, I'm hyper-focused, and I'll show you the shot here from the Stream Center. This screen right here brings up all of your comments live, and I can animate your comments on screen live if they use one of our hashtags. The hashtag for this stream, hashtags are #HeyJosh, for Josh, hashtag HJB for me. But either or, you can just use the hashtags, and we'll try to animate your questions, your comments on screen here on WFLA Now. And I see this one coming in from Eileen. Hashtag HJB, new fan here. Just wondering, is Harmony's mother under any kind of suspicion at all? And I think it's fair to say that when police have a major investigation into the disappearance of a child, everything is on the table as far as the investigation and looking down every possible lead as to what happened to this child. But let's not forget, Crystal Sorey, Harmony Montgomery's mother, lost custody of Harmony in 2018. That is a year before Harmony Montgomery went missing. And so I believe that there was the FaceTime call, and I'll bring this up here as well from our notes. As far as when Crystal last had contact with her daughter Harmony, it was on a FaceTime call, not in person, on FaceTime, Easter of 2019, approximately 6+ months since Harmony, or before Harmony went missing. That's what Crystal Sorey has told members of the media. And so that's why, I mean, of course, Eileen, Harmony's disappearance, they're going to go down every possible avenue. But the chief focus of this investigation, as we understand it, and with, of course, all the arrests and charges that have been filed, are on the two individuals here on the center of your screen, that being Adam Montgomery and girlfriend Kayla Montgomery. I'll look out for some other hashtag HJB, hashtag HJosh questions and comments.
Yeah, and another element to this is the agency that really took a lot of heat for this was that DCYF. They claimed that the final visit from the Child Protective Services was about October 1st of 2019. So that's when they spotted Harmony, and she appeared to be happy and healthy at that time. They couldn't find any proof of abuse at the time. But, now all of a sudden, years later, they reach out to the police department, December 27th to 21, and tells the Manchester police they're unable to locate Harmony at all. So in that 2-year period, they had their last visit with her, and for 2 years, nothing happened with DCYF. So I think there's a lot of finger pointing at that agency to say why, obviously you say there was no problems with the last visit, but then all of a sudden a little girl disappears for 2 years. So a lot of people out there watching this, I know we've overanalyzed DCYF in that 2-year stint, and they've still taken a lot of heat to this day, and haven't given us a very good explanation for it, because I know they've had a lot of pressure, but I'm not sure of their stance today on the matter. But we'll hear more in this news conference, I'm sure.
Yeah, where and so many people want to know where you assign blame for something like this, and whether or not this is a failure with this family? Is this a failure with the system? How? Listen, it's a painful truth. It's a painful reality that Josh, you and I cover all the time as far as missing children. There's missing children in this country. There's numerous cases that we have covered on this live stream. It's kids, it's adults, it's teenagers, but not have any record of Harmony Montgomery for a period of 2 or more years, and police just hearing about it for the first time, or police saying that they just heard about it for the first time after a period of 2 years, 2 months, that leads people to go, okay, is this where has the system not? Where's the system failed? How did we allow this to happen?
Well, and then so, what I found fascinating is everybody who came out of the woodwork on Twitter, and just personal stories of either working with DCYF and how they claim the system failed them, or other instances of cases in New Hampshire or in the region. Those were pretty interesting and eye-opening, as well as the stories of domestic abuse that people personally had, and why some people, whether it was child abuse or not, said all of the issues that came along with that, the stress and the lack of commitment to go ahead and tell someone. I mean, we really ran through a lot of information from the personal side to the agency side on how this could have happened. But again, in the end, it still just baffles everybody that a girl of that age, or a little girl for that matter, can just disappear for 2 years without anybody really knowing.
Yeah, and there is a tie, of course, to our area. Josh and I joining you from Tampa, Florida, in the Tampa Bay area as part of WFLA News Channel 8, your NBC station here in Tampa Bay. And this story, of course, does have a connection to to Tampa Bay. Kevin Montgomery, Adam's brother, who has been mentioned in court documents pertaining to this case, is here in Pasco County. He's here in our area. Our own Justin Shecker did an interview with Kevin Montgomery, and that, of course, that interview is on WFLA.com, the WFLA app. So it was a story, of course, a story that made national headlines because she hadn't been seen for a period of more than 2 years. But then also it's very much on our radar because when those court documents came out and Kevin's name was mentioned, we immediately sought him out, and he described in great detail to us about how special of a young girl Harmony is, and two, of course, that how the disappearance is plaguing the family and what happened to Harmony. Everyone wants to know what happened to Harmony. And again, we might now be less than 10 minutes away from that press conference getting underway. Speaking of the press conference, let's take you live. We have now officially gotten in the live feed, and we can show this to you now. And look at this, Josh. This is interesting. So Harmony Montgomery, and they have the 24-hour tip line there on the screen. That number, 603-203-6060, with a couple of pictures of Harmony located next to the podium.
You can read into that a little bit, too. You would wonder if they would make an announcement that she's been found. I think a lot of people think that's a possibility. But would you have that up? I guess if it's unsolved and they found her, you would have that tip line up. But again, a lot of people are thinking that this could be a direction of a homicide investigation. They may officially name that today based on evidence that they do have.
So members of the media getting set up, plugging in their various equipment, getting their recorders in place, live cameras in place. And so the moment that this press conference gets underway, we will, of course, take you there full screen, listen in, and then after the press conference concludes, Josh and I will break down exactly what we have learned and how this impacts the Harmony Montgomery missing person case and investigation going forward. Josh, I know that there's a lot of folks online who are, my goodness, emotions running high today because everyone wants to know what happened to 8-year-old Harmony, last seen when she was just 5 years old. And clearly, this is not an update being announced as to her being found alive, safe and sound, as much as I'm sure there have been countless prayers made across the country. It's very clear that that is not the announcement being made today. What the announcement is, we'll find out in a few minutes' time. But I think our hearts are sinking a little bit here. I think even in the news industry, when you're talking about, a young girl like this, an innocent young child, your heart sinks when you get to a moment like this and you're thinking about what the outcome of this investigation is ultimately going to be.
Yeah, but I think if they can put this into a different type of investigation, start pointing some fingers because they have some evidence, that's a great move in the right direction. We need to find the people who did it, and they need to get after those people. There's too many what ifs and too many question marks in this case right now, and this little girl doesn't deserve that. She deserves some answers. So I feel like if they can give us some big nugget today and say, this happened, we have this, now we're getting a little closer, I think a lot of people will feel a lot better about that because there's been too many question marks in this case, and I think that needs to change.
Still taking your questions and comments with #HeyJosh, #HeyJB, and we will do so after the press conference concludes to have a conversation with our audience here across YouTube, across Facebook, across the social media platforms that we, of course, are keeping an eye on, Twitter as well. LaMedia XM, #HeyJB, what are your thoughts to your opinion that it's not looking good, like good news for Harmony? I heard they're upgrading it to a homicide investigation. There is one media outlet, I think it was one, Josh, right? One media outlet saying that according to sources within the police department, that this was going to be upgraded to a homicide investigation.
Yeah, the union leader in New Hampshire is one of the, I think that's one of them saying so.
So the union leader reporting this.
Saying shifting to a homicide. Says law enforcement officials are expected to announce Thursday the search for Harmony Montgomery is shifting to a homicide investigation. A source close to the investigation confirmed.
True crime junkie, #HeyJB, #HeyJosh, bringing up a good point here, saying the reward money isn't on this screen. They just have the tip line number. This isn't good. And I believe that the reward, if I remember correctly, Josh, I believe that the award amount had reached something in the neighborhood of 6 figures. I'm trying to remember.
It was
climbing so fast that I don't even remember where it left off.
Somebody's got to have that out there.
Yeah, it was a significant reward total put out there for any information leading to Harmony Montgomery's disappearance. And an observation here, yeah, the tip line is up, and we're not seeing anything. Look, let's make this clear. We do not know what this press conference is going to be exactly announcing, what they're going to be announcing, as we have various members of the media, or excuse me, of law enforcement
yep.
filing in.
They're getting ready.
Let's go live here.
Is it? On time.
And many of these individuals are likely detectives that have been working this case, now filing in.
And a lot of times on news conferences, and working in the media forever, they're usually not on time. So it'd be nice to see this one actually start on time. Looks like they're in a good position to do so.
Again, as a reminder, the very latest on this story on WFLA.com, the WFLA app. We're streaming the press conference to WFLA.com, the WFLA app.
Anybody carrying it live, you're going to hear from the Attorney General for the state of New Hampshire and the Chief of Police for Manchester. Both will be delivering update statements at this stage in the case. They just are not available as far as Q&A. So again, 201.
There you go. 201, they're going to start. Going to hear from the police chief of Manchester, and I believe he said, I don't know who he said the first person was.
About to launch here on Facebook Live as well.
Attorney General.
Attorney General, yeah, and Chief of Police for Manchester, New Hampshire, who we have heard from in previous press conferences. Yeah, Alan Aldenberg is the the police chief in Manchester, New Hampshire. A lot of the stations from this is a story that local stations across New England have been covering, especially out of Boston. A lot of folks wanting to know what happened to Harmony Montgomery. Again, for those of you joining us on YouTube Live, JB Buno, Josh Benson, here with you live on WFLA Now. Carrying this press conference out of Manchester, New Hampshire. We're moments away from this 2 o'clock press conference, expected to learn a significant update in the Harmony Montgomery missing child investigation. Harmony not seen since October of 2019, 2.5 years ago. Really coming up on 3 years missing, but reported missing 2 years, 2 months after she was last seen in December of 2021, this past December. And of course, in January, it made national news very quickly.
So as far as we know in terms of people of interest in this case, obviously the mom was working with authorities and reached out to the mayor to try to get help to find her daughter. She claimed or admitted to problems with substance abuse prior to. So as you know, she's cooperating as far as we understand. Adam Montgomery has been arrested, charged with second-degree assault and a number of weapons charges as far as I understand. So he's sitting in jail, and his the mother-in-law Kayla is what was charged, I believe, with perjury among other things, using food stamps. But she was released. It was later dropped. I'm sorry, that charge was dropped. And a new felony charge of theft was filed. That was in January of this year. So those are the three people that we know of in this case directly, and if any of them will be brought up in this news conference, that'll be interesting to see what direction they head, if at all, since we really don't know what they're going to say here. But we should find out in the next minute or two.
And really, whether or not any of the evidence collected in June from the home that Harmony was known to reside in,
right,
whether or not there's any forensics, has pointed police in this direction.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, there's been a lot of conversation online as to when those forensic results were going to come back. All the information that we're trying to get our hands on, hopefully we will get in this press conference. Members of the media hopefully will also get an opportunity for a little Q&A to ask police and officials here at the Attorney General some questions, because clearly no matter how much information we get here, there are going to be follow-up questions. So hopefully they are able to answer some for us. Again, this is live on WFLA.com, the WFLA app, YouTube Live, and we are moments away from launching on Facebook.
Good afternoon. I'm Attorney General John Formella, and I'm joined today by Manchester Police Chief Alan Aldenberg. We're here today to provide an update regarding the ongoing investigation into the 2019 disappearance of Harmony Montgomery. Back in January, we announced that then 5-year-old Harmony likely disappeared sometime between November 28th and December 10th of 2019. Since that announcement, members of my office, members of the Manchester Police Department, the U.S. Marshal Service, the FBI, and other law enforcement partners have been diligently continuing to work this case. In total, these agencies working together have devoted thousands of hours gathering evidence and pursuing numerous leads. All of these efforts have led us to conclude that Harmony Montgomery was murdered in Manchester in early December of 2019. At this point, while Harmony's remains have not yet been located, we do have multiple sources of investigative information, including just recently confirmed biological evidence that have led us to this difficult and tragic conclusion. As a result, today I am announcing that this is now officially a homicide investigation, and that our investigators will continue to seek justice and look into the circumstances of Harmony's murder and search for her remains. We understand that this is truly devastating news for Harmony's family, friends, and loved ones, and our hearts go out to them. This is also devastating news for the city of Manchester, for our state, and all who have followed this story. Our work now turns to getting justice for Harmony and all those who loved her. In a moment, I'm going to turn it over to Manchester Police Chief Alan Aldenberg, but before I do, I just want to acknowledge the tireless work that the Manchester Police Department has put into this difficult and truly heartbreaking case. We have much work left to do, but I think everyone would join me in thanking the Chief and his team for their efforts thus far. I also want to acknowledge the work of Senior Assistant Attorney General Jesse O'Neill from my office, who is here today. He's worked closely with Chief Aldenberg, the Manchester Police Department, and all of our law enforcement partners in this investigation. And there is much work left to come. Chief.
Thank you, General. Good afternoon. As the Chief of Police for the City of Manchester, I'm beyond saddened that we stand here today to announce that the disappearance of Harmony Montgomery is now officially a homicide investigation. As I stated from the beginning of this investigation and throughout, every effort has been made to bring Harmony home to her family. Our commitment to bringing Harmony home has not wavered, nor will it. Bringing Harmony home will continue to be the #1 priority of the Manchester Police Department. I want to take a moment to publicly thank the Manchester Police Department detectives and the Hampshire Attorney General's Office for their steadfast commitment and dedication to this investigation. There have been many detectives assigned to this investigation, and I'm grateful to all of them. But I want to specifically recognize Captain Sean Layton, Captain Matt LaRochelle, Sergeant Jamie Cavari, who could not be here today, Detective Jack Dunleavy, Detective Scott Riley, and Detective Max Rahill, as well as Deputy U.S. Marshal Billy Tufts, who's here as well. I thank all of them for their tireless work thus far in this investigation. I am grateful for the compassion and dedication that they have given to this investigation over the past 8 months. They have experienced many ups and downs, many moments of frustration and sadness along the way. but they have remained focused and remain undeterred as they enter the next phase of this investigation. I feel it's important to recognize these true professionals, as their job is an extremely difficult one. It is even more difficult when investigating the homicide of a sweet and innocent 8-year-old girl. It is equally important for me to recognize the professionalism and commitment of Senior Assistant Attorney General Jesse O'Neill. Attorney O'Neill has been part of this investigation from day one, and he has not wavered one bit. I am personally grateful to Attorney O'Neill for the guidance and counsel he has provided me along the way. He is a consummate professional, and the state of New Hampshire should be thankful for having such an individual seeking justice for Harmony. So thank you, Jesse. It is not often that a public official takes a moment to thank the media, but I feel it's important to do so. I specifically want to extend my gratitude to WMUR and Fox Boston for continuously keeping Harmony's story at the forefront. Both outlets and many others did so with compassion and professionalism, and for that I say thank you. I know that over the past 8 months that there have been many discussions, speculation, and questions relative to where the system failed Harmony. And I myself continue to share the same concerns and still have many remaining questions. However, the homicide of this little girl rests with the person or persons who committed this horrific act. The Manchester Police Department will do everything within the limits of the law to ensure that the responsible person or persons for the murder of Harmony are brought to justice. As always, I encourage members of the public to continue to use the dedicated tip line should they have any information at all that would assist us in locating Harmony, or any information that they feel is relevant to this investigation. The dedicated tip line has, the dedicated tip line number is 603-203-6060. Again, that number is 603-203-6060. As I said from the beginning, I maintain the stance that there are people out there in the community that have information about this investigation who have yet to come forward. If you are that person, pay attention to me carefully. If you are that person, I implore you to do so now and come forward. I'm not asking you to do it for me, for the people in this room, the people that have been working this investigation. Do it for this little girl who's on this screen. The time is now. Time to step up and do the right thing. Make the call to that tip line or contact the Manchester Police Department any way you see fit. Harmony is a sweet and innocent child who deserves to be brought home to her family and friends. Thank you. General?
Thank you, Chief. Thank you again to your department, your team, and all of our law enforcement partners for their assistance in this investigation. Before we close, I just want to take one more opportunity to express my deepest sympathies to Harmony's family, friends, and loved ones. But cases like this that involve young children and young girls like this are especially difficult. We have a lot of work ahead.
Experiencing some signal breakup from Manchester, New Hampshire.
Thank you all for being here today.
Breaking news on WFLA now. Here's JB Buno.
Harmony Montgomery murdered in 2019. That's the announcement from Manchester police and law enforcement officials, pleading with the public, saying that if there is, and they believe that there is, anyone with information on Harmony Montgomery's murder, her homicide, to contact police at their 24-hour tip line, 603-203-6060. JB, Josh here with you live, folks, on WFLA Now. A difficult press conference. You could see Chief Alan Aldenberg there getting choked up at the very beginning. He, of course, is someone that we have heard from repeatedly on this case, holding press conferences on this case. So he, of course, very close to the ongoing investigation. We've learned a good amount here. No Q&A, no opportunity for members of the media to ask follow-up questions, though more might trickle out in the hours ahead. Of course, the very latest on WFLA.com, the WFLA app. As we get more information about this story, we will publish it here. But let's keep things focused on what we have just learned, Josh. Evidence pointing to December 2019 being the time when Harmony Montgomery was murdered. This now a homicide investigation.
Yeah, this this was very specific, and the thing that caught me is they have biological evidence that led them to the conclusion. So they have the evidence to prove that Harmony was murdered by someone in Manchester in December of 2019. So it kind of confirms a lot of fears people had that, you know, she's not coming home, and that's the sad reality of this case. But now the investigation turns to who did it. There's a lot of finger pointing going on persons of interest of how this could have happened, but you obviously need evidence, and they have that tip line, and they're pushing it really hard to have people call 603-203-6060. It's a dedicated 24-hour tip line. And even the chief just said, you know, the time is now, time to step up and do the right thing and call the tip line. Harmony is a sweet and innocent child who deserves to be brought home to her family and friends. And he choked up when he said that. I mean, he's been following this case, as you have said, JB, been very invested in this case and following it in his town. So he wants to see this closed and justice served. So tough day for the department, but a tough day for the city, and especially for this little girl and the people who love her.
Went missing in 2019. That's when she was last seen. They highlighted that period of November 28th to December 10th, and they have now concluded through biological evidence that she was murdered in December of 2019. This, of course, now they did not make any direct connection between the evidence gathered in mid-June when, of course, they removed the refrigerator and other evidence from the home. They did not specify that the biological evidence was from that. We can't basically establish that that was the biological evidence. But it's worth noting that that was when they gathered a lot in this investigation, that major police search that was conducted at the home. And then, of course, here we are approximately several months later, midway through August, and we have this heartbreaking announcement that Harmony Montgomery never made it to 6 years old, that she was 5 years old when she died at the hands of somebody, murdered, and now an active homicide investigation underway. Let's again remind our audience, very important, she was in the custody of her father, Adam Montgomery. Crystal Sorey there in the center of your screen did not have custody of Harmony due to substance abuse issues. And so whether or not, of course, Adam is a suspect in this case, they did not specify. He, of course, remains locked up on charges related to assault charges, gun charges. Kayla Montgomery, we were talking about this if you were joining us before the press conference on YouTube. We were talking about how Kayla Montgomery here on the right side of your screen next to Josh is out on bond. Adam Montgomery remains locked up on a multitude of different charges.
You know, that's interesting too. You say she never made it to 6, and that's sad because people have been trying to figure out her age now. How old is she today? I even put a tweet out there that she'd be 8 years old today, and now it's confirmed that that's not the case. I mean, that's really sobering to hear and sad in this case. But this chief is frustrated, and he's really focused on trying to figure out who did this. You know, I did find it interesting that, as you brought up, the refrigerator wasn't brought into the play where this evidence was found. The hope is that police have some other evidence that helps tie somebody to this, just maybe not enough at this point to close the case. Obviously, you need a body, and that helps. But with something like this, maybe they're looking for more information with that tip line to really solidify that investigation. But the hope is maybe they're pointed in one direction and they can bring enough evidence to that case to close it up.
They do, as Josh just noted, they don't have her remains. So let me bring up, again, we'll start to interactively now out of the Stream Center take your comments using hashtag HeyJB, hashtag HeyJosh. Why do we do this here on WFLA Now? To bring you into the conversation, to answer questions, to set the record straight on social media. Social media so oftentimes can be littered with misinformation, conspiracy theories that are out there. If we can answer some questions and provide clarity in the cases that we cover, that's part of what we do here at WFLA Now. So Josh and I will look for hashtag HeyJosh, hashtag HeyJB on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter as well. And we'll start here with Aaron Rodgers in our comment section on YouTube Live saying #HJB. They say they found biological evidence. Does that mean they found the crime scene? And the answer to this is no. Of course, biological evidence could be a lot of different things, and it could be, Josh. It could have been a blood stain on a carpet. It could have been other. I don't want to get too grim,
but it could be. I mean, it could be. Her body could have been moved. They could have they're clearly found enough evidence to make the determination she's not alive. So there must be enough evidence there to say, that could be the crime scene of where something happened, to point to the fact that she was killed in this spot, but her body was taken. So obviously they don't have the body, but they have what appears to be something that had taken place and enough biological evidence of hers to prove that, yeah, she is not alive. So
many times in homicide investigations will somebody dispose of the body and the crime scene will be in one place, but the remains are found in a second. That is so often the case. So this really wasn't specified, but this is a good question. But the big thing that they did say is that they do have biological evidence pointing to the fact that she was murdered.
And forensics, those investigations can take a while. They can also look for the very minute details, blood spatter or any of that on the walls, any of that kind of thing, when it gets very specific into a crime scene. So, yeah, they didn't touch anything on that. But that's a great question from Aaron.
Yeah, and we have had cases in the past. I want to bring up Danny's comment here, and this is a very astute comment from Danny, #KJB. The evidence of murder wouldn't be blood, since blood can be from anything. Wouldn't it need to be body decay evidence? And really, we're not entirely sure as to what kind of biological evidence that they have found. But I remember reporting on previous cases, Josh, where at times, if a amount of blood is discovered that it's just overwhelming to the point where somebody would not have been able to look. I don't want to get too far down this rabbit hole. We do not know the kind of biological evidence that was discovered. But
all we need to know is that it was enough for them to make a firm determination she's no longer alive. I think that's all we need to know.
Yeah, and it's important to remember that that unless we have it from law enforcement, but I'm just trying to paint the picture and provide some context as to what it could be. But again, the words that they used was biological evidence pointing to this being a murder.
And bottom line, it's awful. It doesn't matter how or where or when this happened. It's just, think about this. This is just awful that this little girl had to deal with this and die a result of whoever's, responsible for this.
Area Love, #KJB, missed the press conference. Did they mention suspects? They did not. But this process now is, I would imagine, for Manchester, New Hampshire police, it is full steam ahead now on getting justice for Harmony Montgomery. And I wouldn't be surprised if already that hashtag Justice for Harmony is being used on social media. But now this closes the door on a missing persons case, Josh, and it now opens the door on a homicide investigation determining who is responsible for this. And again, Adam Montgomery remains locked up, and we don't know how many conversations have been had between Adam Montgomery and investigators while he's been in lockup, and whether or not he is the level of cooperation, I would imagine, isn't that high, but that's something that perhaps we will get more information on as this investigation develops in the weeks and months ahead.
It's interesting that 2 months have gone by, 2.5, since they were at that apartment with the refrigerator. So they've been obviously working very hard in the last 2 months to try to come to this determination. So I wonder how much investigative work has been going on since then, or if it was mostly in the lab and mostly just trying to confirm what everybody feared. But yeah, I don't know. It's just it's a sad update, and I think a lot of people were expecting this today.
Again, JB, Josh here with you, answering your #KJB, #KJosh questions and comments. However, we only have another 5 minutes on stream. I've been informed by our staff that we have a lot of news coming into our newsroom here at WFLA. So while we could, and in previous live streams, we are able to go live and do this Q&A portion and talk with you for an extended period of time, on days when it's very active in our newsroom, we do have to get going and move on to other pertinent news stories developing at this hour. So we are going to have to go in approximately 5 minutes time. So Josh, if it's okay with you, we'll just kind of really focus on some of the questions and comments coming in with the hashtags.
Yep.
And then we'll make it onto the other news stories coming into our newsroom. This is an interesting one. I was wondering this, and I've never been a reporter in New Hampshire. I've never been a reporter in New England. The closest I was in upstate New York. But Melanator says #KJB. Does that mean more resources available since she's considered a homicide victim?
I would think so.
I would think so too.
I would think so. Once you hit that determination, I think then it opens the gate for other help. And JB says it. I mean, obviously we don't know because it's a different part of the country, but I think, and I think a lot more people would want to help, knowing that this little girl's no longer alive. They want to find out who did this to her.
And also, and you would hope too that there's also an investigation into the system in place in New Hampshire that allowed for it to get to this point. How does a girl go missing for 2 years, 2 months, and police just find out about it? How was that allowed to happen? That should be, of course, also an investigation that is conducted. But right now, the focus on, of course, finding out who is responsible for Harmony Montgomery's murder. Let's get to some others. Again, it's got to use the hashtag for us to animate it on screen. So Liberty Books AZ, #KJB, how do they know it's her biological evidence? Was there DNA gathered? And you would have to imagine, and while this wasn't definitively stated in the press conference, you would imagine that, of course, the biological evidence that DNA and forensics was able to establish the link between Harmony.
I'm sure they have a lot of DNA for Harmony.
I would imagine at this stage, and how many resources, remember the FBI is involved, New Hampshire police involved. It's a multi-agency effort. So they didn't explicitly say that, Liberty, but you would imagine that every forensic tool was at their disposal to determine that the biological evidence that they have discovered in this case was ultimately Harmony's. And also, too, not just biological evidence of any kind, but the biological evidence that would point to her no longer being alive. You can find biological evidence on the side of the road, and a person can still be alive, but they have determined that this biological evidence, they have determined that through this biological evidence that the person connected to that evidence is no longer living. So, of course, a very sad update here today. Looking through some of the other comments, and a bunch coming in. Looking here.
You know, I think it's interesting too, and if they're going to start searching, if they're going to start coming up with ideas. I remember wasn't there snow on the ground in June when they were up there?
Well, there was the first search, and then that nerdy addict had the video of. Remember this search? I have this loaded up in our system.
Yeah. So when was this?
That was January.
January, but then what in June? Trying to think. What? Just regardless, June there wouldn't probably be snow, but January. I mean, obviously it gets cold up there, and if they're going to be searching anywhere, it's harder to do it in the winter, that's for sure. Because remember, they had to thaw the backyard. And I remember that. They ran piping and everything to try to warm the ground so they could dig.
And great drone video here by Nerdy Addict.
Yes, good video.
Able to show us the backyard. And then there was the separate search. I don't have video queued up for, but the separate search in June.
Was this June?
No.
Okay.
This was January,
okay.
If I remember correctly.
My brain's mush.
Yeah, it's been it's a lot. We cover a lot of cases here, folks.
Yeah.
I feel the same way, Josh.
And I'm older than you, so it gets worse as you age.
Lovey, #KJB, is Kayla out on bail? And she is. She has bonded out. And the charges against Kayla not as serious as the charges against Adam. Adam is facing a multitude of various charges, including assault charges connected to Harmony herself. Which really, I mean, it just paints a very painful picture as to what Harmony's life must have been like for the 5 years that she was blessed to be here on this planet. 5 years of, and really, the documents have showed that she has suffered abuse, and that, again, being transferred in custody from her mother to her father, and it not being the best environment for a 4 or 5 year old girl to be living in. it just really breaks your heart as to what her life was like in the short time that she was with us.
Yeah, and Adam Montgomery charged with assault for allegedly giving Harmony a black eye in 2019, and the indictments issued against him on June 20th include 2 armed career criminal charges, 2 charges for theft, 2 for felon in possession of a firearm, and 2 for receiving stolen property. They all involve a rifle and shotgun stolen in Manchester in September or October of 2019. So he's looking at a lot of problems. He's indicted on 8 gun charges and faces decades in prison. So that's where his situation sits.
Yeah, a rap sheet that is significantly long. Folks, we have to get going. I'm being kicked off stream here. We do have to get going for the next press conference that is currently getting underway. Attorney General Merrick Garland, 2:30, announcing a big update, or the very latest, really, speaking as far as the Department of Justice's operation, as far as the Mar-a-Lago operation that, of course, we told you about earlier this week. We got to get going, folks. WFLA Now will be right back. And, of course, we'll have the very latest on WFLA.com, the WFLA app.